Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. If you were with me for some time, you heard me saying on multiple occasions that that's the human nature, or that's the way we are as humans, and a lot of things that happen in the world happen because that's the way we are, and we as humans act in the same way most of the time, overwhelmingly the same way under certain circumstances. And with that being said, we have an article here where the Ukrainians are doing exactly what other people, other armies did in the past, regardless of their nationality. In this case, I will use the example of the Germans, the Nazis, the German army. When they pushed the front eastward, they went over Ukraine, and then when they were pushed back by the Soviets, then the same thing happened. And what I'm talking about is cleaning and punishing the collaborators. So the Ukrainians, when the Germans came with the front going east towards Moscow, the Ukrainians were very much abused, used, and killed by the certain kind of people who were, I can't really say too much, but the ones that are familiar with history, they know exactly what I'm talking about, and the certain kind of groups that were oppressing them. We can use the Holodomor, the genocide of the starving of Ukrainians, some people say 8 million, by the Soviets. Remember that? Okay, so if you look at the names of people in charge and responsible, don't look only at Stalin. It was not only Stalin. There were some other names over there, and I urge you to find those names. It's not hard, okay? People responsible from the NKVD, the secret police, and those people. Anyway, so when the Germans pushed the Soviets, the Ukrainians plus the Germans engaged in some killings, and they killed people who collaborated with the Soviets, who didn't go back eastwards with the Soviet army, did not retreat. And there were a lot of programs and other killings, mass killings. Then when the Soviets pushed the German army back, a lot of the population from Ukraine moved with the army towards Berlin, running from the Soviets. And the same thing happened in Romania and other countries. They were running from this. Not only the collaborators with the Germans, but also people who knew better what would await for them. And then when the Soviets came with the same commissars and secret police, they committed their part of the deal. Pam, 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 summarily killing the population. And those people who were, those groups, they were killed by when the Germans pushed the front. Now we're again riding high over the same territories, and they killed Ukrainians and German nationals that were living in Ukraine. They had a big minority of Germans, migrants that were over there for centuries. The same thing happened in other countries. Now, the same thing happens here in Ukraine, and I stated this, and that's not because the Soviets were necessarily bad, or the Germans were necessarily bad, or the Ukrainians were necessarily... This is us. I'm not trying to defend anybody. I can only defend myself for my actions, and I have nothing here, not guilty of anything. But what I'm trying to say is human nature under the same circumstances acts most of the time, overwhelmingly, the same way. Now we have the Ukrainian thing. The Russians pushed the Ukrainians, and now in certain areas the Ukrainians pushed the Russians back. Now when the Russians came over, obviously they paid some dues, and now they moved back. Now the Ukrainians are doing the exact thing. Obviously it's politically incorrect to recognize that and say it out loud, because the Ukrainians are the good guys, the Russians are the bad guys. But it's not like that. We're all good and bad, and under the circumstances we act the same way. So this article here reveals that's exactly what the Ukrainians are doing, according to the sources that report this. So it's sad, but as I said, it's sad, but I said it's not something out of the ordinary. They do this. People in this kind of circumstances, payback. That's happened for centuries since humans were around. When the Hungarians took over Romanians in Transylvania, they did this. When the Romanians took over Transylvania, they did this to the Hungarians. And the same way. That's why so much love among countries and nations, because they did this kind of favor to each other whenever they had the upper hand. You can't change this even if you try to get the SIM card out of your phone. I have a new phone. Anyway, this article comes from Al Mayadin, Arab independent news outlet. Kiev executes 39 pro-Russian activists in Kherson, report states. Ukraine is committing mass executions in Kherson to intimidate the region's pro-Russian activists. Ukraine's forces are carrying out punitive measures in public as a demonstrative means of punishing against residents of Kherson for their support of Russia. A representative of the emergency services of the Kherson region said. According to the Kherson official, the punitive measures, which included executions, are being carried out by the Ukrainian security forces under the leadership of Western advisors. The main targets are pro-Russian activists who were unable to withdraw back with the Russian forces to the left bank of the Dnieper River. This comes after Russia's defense ministry announced last week the complete withdrawal of Russian troops and equipment from the right bank of the Dnieper River, Kherson, as Moscow noted that there will be a need to build defenses on the left bank. Commander of the joint Russian forces in Ukraine, Sergei Surovikin, reported last Wednesday to Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu that it was necessary to withdraw the troops. Now, we have here some tweets, and we have here a picture with two Ukrainian soldiers, and one of them has a helmet, military helmet, and on it is it's written in German, jedem das seine. And it says it means to each his own. This slogan was found on the gates of the concentration camp created by the Nazis, banned in Germany as a Nazi symbol associated with the Holocaust. Now this is what they show. I don't know if you're gonna show right. That's the helmet. I can show you, but the guy on the other side, this guy here, right there, he has it on the helmet. That thing written on it. Now I don't know if these are Russian actors or not. I'm just telling you what this guy posted here. So they say that they are Nazis, and this tries to be an example. It says that according to the Kherson emergency services officials, some 39 pro-Russian activists were executed in Moscow's former stronghold. Their bodies were not given to relatives and are planned to be used in staged scenes, allegedly testifying to Russian war crimes. 74 people were taken to an unknown destination, he told reporters. Now I have Pyotr Panasyuk from Twitter again. He shows these people here. Oops. These people here with the Russians with things around their heads, beaten up, bloodied, and it says here that in Kherson, neo-Nazi troops round up residents suspected of disloyalty to Kiev. Brutal lynching and humiliation are the order of the day. Probably these people are not longer alive. So to do this, they break into houses and apartments left in the city of Kherson and vandalize property and so on. All crimes committed by the Ukrainian side were being documented by Russian law enforcement agencies, he underlined. Well, as I said, this is what we are. We might think that we act civilized and we trained ourselves to say thank you and please, but in the bottom of our behavior, that's a trained behavior. Our parents taught us that, or the society, or the school, the teachers. Without that, we wouldn't know to do that. unless we will just behave in order to achieve our goals, following our instincts and our interests. So, you know, I need something from you and I can't beat you up. I will try to be nice and then somehow get it. I will use that technique. Nobody has to teach me that. That occurs in the woods, you know what I mean? But we are trained to do that. To, hey, do this, ask for it, share, all these values that we become civilized. Or after you get a little candy or something, don't throw the wrapping on the ground. No, throw it into the garbage bin or garbage can. These are learned behaviors. Some of us learned it, some of us were told but didn't give a fuck. So they are closer to our instincts, which is animals. So here this doesn't surprise me, it's just I think it's relevant because these are the atrocities of war that allows us as animals as we are, with brains, and that makes us more dangerous than the poor animal who you know, doesn't think that far and kills for prey and for food, not necessarily for pleasure or for other reasons, unlike us who can think of many reasons to kill our fellow humans. So this is what happens, and as I said, this is just the Ukrainians now. I'm pretty sure everybody did it. The Russians probably did it as well, and other countries did it whenever they had the upper hand and invaded other countries, and after they left, the other ones came over and did what these guys are doing here. Well, I thought it was very interesting to share with you the human nature, our human nature. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.